uh, what am I doing here on a artist talk? And I think আমরা অনেকদিন থেকেই আমরা কিছু বিচ্ছেদ তৈরি করে ফেলেছি between thinkers, artists, architects, writers, and poets and musicians, and even people of the general public. Now, if that is so, then who are these people really working for? If we do not really work for people, and we do not work together for causes, then isn't our work going to be extremely personal? Aren't we asking that, hey, this is my work and you have to take a look at it? What does our work mean? Or even more interestingly, what do you want to achieve with our work? Now, I'm going to go back to a point where there were people, not Muzharul Islam himself alone, but people in Bangladesh who used their work to say something or achieve something much, much bigger than themselves. Even now, a lot of artists want to do the same, but sometimes we don't reach that a sphere of where it not only transforms the boundaries of ourselves and society, but it can go into even bigger boundaries like nation. And that is where someone like Muzharul Islam comes in. I'm going to take you through a little journey of his life, which is important for us to understand what I mean by Muzharul Islam and his politics. So I'm just going to share my screen over here. So yes, the first slide is a black window, and it's because that we don't want to talk about politics, or what does politics mean, or what does politics mean to us as a person, or how do we operate within politics? How is our work political? What do we want to achieve with our work? What we achieve, is that political? So there is a lot of silent areas within this whole understanding of one's work and one's politics. And sometimes it can be researched, and some of it can be understood, but not all of it will ever surface, because a person's personal politics is something as close to as someone's personal emotions. Not everything can be seen, but a lot of threads can be joined together to make a link to understand that how a person like Muzharul Islam can operate, or did operate. Now, when we look at this picture, what we have to understand that even this picture has a political viewpoint. It is a particular way that one would want to portray Bangladesh. Is it a picturesque way? Is it a way to show who we are? Is it anti-development? Is it pro-culture? So there is a lot of areas of political positioning the moment we bring in a picture like this. The next picture is even more disturbing. That is this who we wanted to be at one time? Is this who we were at one time? Who collaborated? Who stood against them? All these politics are, again, things that we don't want to understand. But we cannot avoid the fact that they too were Bengalis. But we don't want to, sometimes it's more difficult to take on a picture like this, because if the previous picture was that of two Bengali gentlemen, then this is the picture of a Bengali woman who was modern enough to have a hookah in the afternoon. And this, again, is something which cannot be immediately understood if we try to put everything in a linear timeline. Or is this the image of Bangladesh, a country that had one of the largest education centers over 1400 years ago? Now, and then when we look at something like this, how can we, under what politics are we branded as a developing nation? Under what result of politics are we there as a developing nation? So All this is something that should get us thinking. And someone like Muzharul Islam is someone who would start to think about things like this. Muzharul Islam is considered one of the pioneers of modern architecture in Bangladesh. Of course, his work is the pioneer work of modern architecture in Bangladesh. But the problem is, the moment we say he is the, even if we say he's the pioneer of Bangladesh, we basically do not portray him correctly. We also curtail his achievements and what he is capable of. He is not, so what I want to say, it is the incomplete understanding of his work if it is only seen as a work of modern architecture. It is important to understand what led on to develop his work and what led on to develop his politics, or the person he is, the psyche that he is. And we have to understand that, is Muzharul Islam like us? He is not. Today, we are going through something that we never thought we will be going through last year. We're going through a global pandemic. This will have lasting effect on us. This is changing us as we speak. So the events in Muzharul Islam's life must have changed him. And those are events that we can not comprehend because we were not part of those events. So this is a way to understand that how we should understand a person's psyche, a person's construct, or even a person's politics for that matter, because it will be a story of that person's life and not just some analysis done by a scholar. So if I take you through a very quick chart, I just put this chart together. It's like you go from 1923 and you carry on, and there is all these events that is happening on this part of the world. Something's happening in Kolkata, the famine is happening in Bengal, and there are world events also at that time. The World War was taking place, Hiroshima, Nagasaki was bombed, and within all this, Muzharul Islam is growing up. This is something that we have to understand. It is not that he was born on this date and then he went on to do this and then he went on to do that. This is not the way that we can really understand him. We have to keep looking at him on these both sides of the wall. One of what was happening in the immediate subcontinent and what was happening in world events. And this will go on all the way till 1971. This whole push and pulls happening from two different positions. So what was the first event? The famine. Now, we've never been through this, but Muzharul Islam did. It did happen at a time when it affected him. He was growing up, he was young, but he would have been exposed to this. He would have been exposed to images of this somehow. He would have been exposed to the horror of this coming in across from Kolkata. And even Bengal was affected, but not as greatly as Kolkata, but all of Bengal was affected for that matter. And then pictures like this are not just archive pictures, they were reality. You would have these people and eventually dying, and then them being burned as if they were just something that you burn, like trash or boxes or leaves. And it did affect not even someone like Muzharul Islam, but other people too. It would affect people like anyone sensitive, like Jainul Abidin for that matter. And that is something that we have to understand, that how a person's construct starts happening because of events around him. Then came the partition, one after the another. The partition, even though it was the making of countries, it was the destroying of lives. Many people had lost lives over there. And we would never be able to understand this. But it is again something that Muzharul Islam had to go through in his lifetime. He knew when you have trains coming into stations full of dead bodies, then that is something, those newses, those events are something that nobody will forget. And because of this, you have a tremendous positioning of self going on within you. The first of the famine is where you have this anti-British, anti-colonial sentiment rising very strongly. And as you know, that Bengal was one of the hotspots. The next one, with the creation of these countries, again, Bengal became a hotspot with these trains moving between West Bengal and East Bengal, and all the riots going on, especially in this region. So it is going from one traumatic position of this ruler into the traumatic position of, is this really a new state? Is this the new state of life that we want? And you would end up with things like this, people going out looking for people to kill, and people would die, and people would flee, and people would be absolutely displaced forever. The next thing that would happen in his life would be the 21st February language movement. Now, just coming to that, I just want to bring you up to where we are right now. So, Muzharul Islam was born in 1923 in Murshidabad. This is when the British occupation was at its peak, and the anti-British sentiment was growing at its peak also. In middle school, in 1932, he was in Rajshahi. That is the time when he became extremely connected to the archaeological treasures of Bengal, and he was, growing to become a Bengali of tremendous self-respect. In 1940, he did his Bachelor's of Science in Physics from Calcutta University, and that is the time when it was just before the Second World War, and he was being exposed to world politics. He was being exposed to the rise of Marxism, and he completed the civil engineering between 1945 to 1946. And this was in Shibpur in Engineering College. It was in 1947 the partition took place. After that, in 1950, the Cold War politics was at its peak. And in 1950, he actually went to the University of Oregon in America to do his undergrad in architecture. Mind you, he already had 2 degrees before that, one in physics and one in engineering. In 1952, he came back, but he came back just after this event. So when this event was taking place, for him, when he not to be actually in Dhaka was something that affected him greatly. And then coming back and to find a post-21 situation, for that, it was also something very powerful, where everybody, his friends and everyone was united together to really bring out a Bengali culture and a Bengali identity. It was the politics that was within him at that time was not one of national politics. It was one of making a country, or keeping our culture, or telling the West Pakistanis at that time this is our culture, and this is who we are, and this is what we want to be. And the language movement was in many ways the last straw for that. The Shahid Minar was built. The Shahid Minar was designed by 2 people that he was very close to. And one was Navera. The other was Hamidur Rahman, the designer of Shahid Minar himself. Why he was close to these 2 people? Because they were his left-wing political friends. He was a Marxist, Muzharul Islam. He was very much connected to left-wing politics, and these were his left brothers and sisters. This is the model designed by Hamidur Rahman for the Shahid Minar. This was an early picture of it. This is a somewhat recent picture of the Shahid Minar. Sorry. But after that, what would happen? After that, what would happen is that Muzharul Islam would be actually meeting up with his friends across his coffee table, and also his cards table in the evening. Now, this four sides of the table is very, very important, because in the four sides, on one side we have an architect, on the other side we have artists, on the other side we have someone who's a writer, and then also someone who's a singer. But the strange thing is, all these people went on to be the best of their time. Now, this is unique. This has only happened here, nowhere else in the world, where all these people around one table and in the house of an architect. And these people, all of them went on to change their professions in a particular way. And all of them were extremely tied together in terms of the idea of nation building. So what would connect them? What would connect them would actually be interesting to see. So when we look at these people, we know that each one of them are renowned for what they did, but what would be important is to look at their each one of their lives and find out how political they were. Every one of them. Some were connected to the liberation war, somehow connected to the language movement, used their positions later on to be even more active in terms of, or to do more activism for that matter. But again, the glue between them was someone called Muzaffer. He was the president of NAP, and his fraction was called the Muzaffar NAP, the National Awami Party, and he was an active politician. And he, being an economist, a teacher out of Dhaka University, altogether had the same wavelength as the other people, and he would be coming to their tea table, and they would be very close together. The other things that were happening at the same time, Udichi was practicing in his own gardens. Chanat initially started out from his house. And Muni Singh, very interestingly, was a frequent visitor, someone that he was quite connected to because of his left-wing political beliefs. But many people did not know how connected. I will tell you later. So Zainal Abidin, someone that we know very well. We know where he graduated from, we know what he drew and how important he is. But what is also important is to look at things like this, that he formed the Charu or Karu Shilpo Sangram Porishad. Now, why would the artist feel that he has to create something like Shilpi Sangram Porishad? So all these things you see, through Muzharul Islam, it would be a way to find that who all these people were. Also, what I want to bring to notice is that when we are looking at this artist, when I'm saying that if you look at Muzharul Islam only through his architecture, you will not see him. The same way that I want to say, if you look at Zainal Abidin, Kamrul Hassan, Shamsur Rahman, only through their work, you will never see that. You have to dig deeper and to understand what they stood for, what they were trying to do, what they were trying to say. Not everything is in their work. Some are, but not everything. And the rest of the work has to be evaluated on that backdrop, has to be seen with that same intent, is that what do they really want to say to us? So when Zainal Abidin drew this, we have to understand this was the pictures of the famine in Kolkata. And when he drew this, the left wing of Kolkata picked them up and they published it. And when they published it, it was banned by the British because it exposed that in many ways that they were responsible for this famine. So Zainal Abidin went on slowly to establish the school over here and also to change art, to give Bengali art a new form, a new way, a new modernity, and a new way of looking at our people, not just as who they are, but to look at them for more than who they are. And to also to use their work as a language to say something. Kamrul Hassan, probably one of the most active activist of his time as an artist. And we know that how important he was for starting different activism during his time. But what is important is that to understand that he, even as early as the Second World War, he became a part of activism. And this is what is important. Even these people started becoming connected to political movements, political involvements, to activism very early in life. It is not something that they did much later on. So their activism started from the British rule, went through the partitions, went through the Bangladesh-Pakistan war, and it went beyond that actually even. His work ended even during the reign of Ershad. So Kamalasan was someone so, let's say, celebrated even by the West that Yugoslavia even published one of his pictures in a stamp which Bangladesh government at that time did not, sorry, East Pakistan government at that time did not pick up for publication, but they did. His work changed over time, started becoming more and more progressive, more and more complex, and becoming truly of international style. And of course, he never, his activist soul never left him. And I mean, to actually draw something like this at the time when he was actually doing this was quite risky, but that did not stop him. Neither have we found another artist to come forward to make 3 posters which would have so much voice, so much to say, so much to say in such a way that not only to tell us to stand up, but also tell us to stand up united. I think that is the most beautiful thing about this particular group, which is On Muzharul Islam, Kamalasan, Jainul Abidin, Kalim, Sharafi, Shamsur Rahman, is that they all saw every one of Bangladesh to be the same. No difference in religion, no difference in caste, no difference in social position. And this comes through when you look into this, these 3 posters. Kamalasan's work goes beyond. It goes into the era of his post-war, when he was designing some of the most beautiful stamps ever designed for Bangladesh. And this is something that I want to really point out. The left one is drawn by Jainul Abidin, the right one is by Kamalasan. Both of them are about Bhashani. And Bhashani to them at that time was the true leader of the people. Don't forget, Muslim League existed at that time. After that, Awami League was being formed, but it was the National Awami Party's leader that they looked at. And the reason for that was actually their left-wing alignment. I think that is why both of them, in a way, idolized Bhashani. And of course, Dr. Muzaffar also was from the NAP, but the same principles as being of the National Awami Party, but with a little variation, mainly because of which left to follow the Soviet left or the Sino left. This is Shamsur Rahman, who went on to get the award of Ekushe Padak, and his most famous writing being of Shadinata. This is a simple translation of his that great poem that he had written. Now, what is interesting is about, as you go through his writings, you see a way that he's going all the way from Nazrul to Mujib, to the normal people, to the fields, to the rivers, and then becoming extremely personal, like to his father, and then to his sister, and to his friend, to his wife. So the way that he's able to make the idea of freedom, not only something which is abstract, but something that belongs to a person and then actually to a nation. This was a beautifully written work of that time. He has some great other works, something called Bondi Shibir Thike, Oshombho Powerful Kaj. And this was, recited in a lot of the training camps at that time. It was something that he had written to inspire the freedom fighters. And then later on, when he was something who his consciousness never left him. There's a much later work when he was looking at the country and he was not happy with what he was saying. And that is when he wrote this amazing work. And Uter Pite Cholche Swadesh, and he's trying to understand where this country is headed. And of course, Kalim Sharafi, someone who we know that he was a singer, is known to be one of the greatest Rabindra Sangeet singer of Bangladesh. But do we know that how he became associated to Rabindra Sangeet? He was actually arrested for violence against the British, because he used to be actively, throwing stones, destroying things. And at that time, when he was arrested, he was actually underage. But the British even then threw him into jail. So in jail, nobody really gave him hardship because he was a young kid. But then he used to go roam around in jail, and it was in the jail library that he came across Sanchita, and he came across other writings of Rabindranath. That is how he came to know about Rabindranath. And that is how he picked up Rabindra Sangeet. And so, when we look at people like that, we think that all of a sudden these people become these Rabindra Sangeet singers. And how they become, and when a person discovers Rabindranath in jail, and somebody went to jail to fight against the British, will pick up writings within Rabindranath's writings, which will not be just for him poetry or just something which is romantic. He would infuse ideas from this great writer, and he would look at Rabindranath for inspirations to how to, create a mind frame from which he will operate later on. And Kalim Sharafi goes on exactly like this. He becomes a Rabindra Sangeet singer. He was connected to the radio at one time. He even left that because a lot of allegations was brought against him. So he went from one trouble to another, trouble to another. But for him, it was probably always trouble. And he was as if he was meant to make trouble. And again, at the very end, he was even during Ershad's rule, his involvement in Ghana Adalat, there were charges brought against him also in 1991. For someone who started going to jail very early, to have another case brought against him in 1991 must have been almost humorous. The person who fueled a lot of their ideas, Muzaffar. Dr. Muzaffar was, the president of Bangladesh NAP, and his wing was called Muzaffar NAP. Extremely honorable person who was also advisor for our government in exile. He was offered a ministerial position, which he refused. And this is the kind of true left politician that he was. I'm going to skip these a bit. It might get a little boring. So I'm going to go forward to, just to say, if every time you read a word from them, you will see things like roll against, or, fighting for. So their whole construct was things like that they were saying no to. And of course, Moni Singh, the head of the Communist Party of Bengal. Now, imagine Muzharul Islam coming back from America, enough money from scholarships to be able to buy a house in Dhanmondi, to make a house actually in Dhanmondi, and even buy a Mercedes. A successful architect at that time, getting new commissions, making money. And at that time, when it was absolutely banned, the Communist Party was totally banned, and it was absolutely banned to have any connection with them. And it would be extremely risky, even punishable by death if necessary. He used to smuggle activists of the Communist Party in his Mercedes to his house, where later on at night, Moni Singh would come. Now, imagine the risk he was taking. He was taking this risk because his total faith in the left-wing politics, total faith in Marxist politics. And the risk he was taking was abnormal. And then at one time, somebody asked him that, did you not feel scared? He said two things. One is that people would not think that the Communist Party, cadres are going around in a Mercedes. So that was something, it was the easy way to hide them. But the risk was always there. The other thing is, there was only a few Mercedeses in Dhaka at that time, and most people, especially the intelligence people, knew that this was Muzharul Islam's car. So it's very interesting when you see that their mindset, which gives them which actually gives them a belief system, is this is what I believe in, and then I'm going to do whatever it takes to do that. I will take all the risk necessary. And it was not something he would discuss with his family or in one consensus on, or even talk to friends about. He would just do it because this is what he stood for. He would have Udichi practice in his house. Udichi at that time was also an activist group, and he was very much supportive to them. And all this formulated a person who we can say is a person who was working towards a modern Bengali, but a different modernity, a modernity within modernity, a different modernity. Away from the British colonial rule, nothing replicating them, away from the international style that was coming in at that time, or which was being advocated. And then he was going away from faceless, meaningless, cultureless, placeless buildings like this, and he needed to find his own language. And even as great as this building was, it was probably not what he wanted to do. He wanted to do something more. He did not want to be a part of a great American architect coming and doing a great solution. He wanted to be a Bengali architect, leading Bengalis forward to what they should be doing. And how would they do it? So a way of doing is that he was overlaying his architecture and his nationalistic beliefs and his left-wing politics, and all these were all layers that were starting to intertwine at that time. And then at 1952 to 53, this is when he drew the Fine Art Institute. At that time, there was nothing this modern, nothing this radical anywhere, not in this part of the world, not in India, not in Sri Lanka, not in Bangladesh, not as all the way up till Japan. This was how far ahead this building was. And this is something that we don't try to understand, that he in one master stroke gave us a way forward. He took away all our post-colonial hangover and said, this is the way to go forward. Now, is this just a modern building? No. It is totally, it is us, but it is us in a new attire, that's all. It is the soul of a Bengali. It's the climate of Bangladesh. It is the places of Bangladesh. It is the Baganbari, the way it connects to the gardens, the way he drew his first sketch to be able to sit in a garden, the way that still it remains as a Baganbari and people celebrate the trees and sitting around the trees. And the way that it was drawn at that very time by hand, this wonderful stair which has yet to be bettered, and this building which is yet to be challenged. And also to take these artists and tell them is that you have so much more. So he would embody in this building all the great terracotta work of Bengal into one wall and say, look at this wall. And remember that we had made much more beautiful walls of brick over hundreds of years ago. So you have a heritage. You did not come from nowhere. And it is these kind of inspiration that he was also trying to transfer into this building. Mind you, the two people who were alongside when this building was being done was Jainal Abidin, who was the principal or the director, and also Kamalasan, and all of them spoke the same language of nation building. His public library, a very strong building, done at the same time. Again, something which is very new for that time. And what is more important about this building, if you take a look at the journey, how people move through this building, you enter on the ground floor, go up this ramp over here, come to the first floor, and from the first floor, you have a grand view of the reading hall. It is a way to make the library a spiritual place, a grand space, the journey to a grand space, the journey to the importance of illumination of true knowledge. And this is the whole idea that he wanted to say through this one journey, and saying this is how important education is. And the importance of education is also something extremely political for him. But to do this journey, he went back to his two left-wing friends. Novera was one of them. These two pictures of Novera, and the right picture is an interesting picture. This was the banner of Google to celebrate one of Novera's birthday. I cannot remember exactly which one. Some two other works, but this is one of the largest pieces ever done by Novera. Unfortunately, something which, not celebrated as much as it should be. The other works as we go in are done by Nurur Rahman, and you go in, and Nurur Rahman, being the architect or the designer of the Shahid Minar, is even rejoiced today, because the Shahid Minar is being copied till date. And that is the success of this inspirational design done by him. But his work in the building is extremely powerful. Both work talk about the power of the common people, just like any work of someone coming from left-wing politics would be doing. It would be telling these people coming to university or coming to this library. It was the general library, the public library at that moment, to tell people that it is not about only the city. It is not only about you. It is about everyone in the country. And if it is the fishermen or the people in the villages, together we must rise. Together we must find a better future. And it is those kind of notions that would lead people into this grand reading hall. Then what? Then he went to a school, the tropical school in England, a very famous school. But it did not appeal to him. It did not appeal to him because it was all about designing for the tropics. It was the way the West wanted to look at the tropics. It was not the way that he wanted to look at ourselves. And it shows in this special publication where many pages were given to Africa and all those places. But for India and Pakistan and Ceylon, only basically 2 pages were given. And this is 1 page on India, on Chandigarh, and the other page was again 1/3 given to work in India, this little bit on Pakistan, and that much on Ceylon. So, and that Pakistan, that part is the building designed by On Muzharul Islam, the library. So he knew that if I stay over there, then I will be marginalized. I'll be looked at a developing country. My architecture will be looked at as tropical architecture, and we will have to work under this kind of viewpoint of how people look down at us. So when people look down at us, it is something that needs to be changed. And this is an architect who was sent by Ayub Khan to go around Bangladesh and to see, to do a development program for Bangladesh and Pakistan. And East Pakistan at that time, both Pakistan, sorry. And it is an interesting picture is that how two people are looking at each other, how the person from the plane is looking at the boat and how the people in the boat looking at the plane. So, and the person on the plane would come up and try to look at Bangladesh as an exotic country and to copy the heart into even a modern building. But this is a mosque still exists. The other one is a preliminary drawing of bird in Kumilla. So then he, coming back, he decided, no, I'm not going to, be marginalized. I'm going to go forward. And he designed these 5 polytechniques. But he knew how to play within the politics. At that time, Ford Foundation was acting in East Pakistan at that time, and he knew that he would have to operate with them somehow. So he brought in, under those programs, he brought in his friend from America. They worked on the 5 polytechniques, but he would actually later on change these master plans into something would be much more meaningful and to make them more rooted to our country. Like this is the one, sorry, I just missed a slide over here. So he would actually, I'm just going to rush through this, he would actually look into account of which part of the country he's working for and take characteristics of that part of the country, like where water was important, he would highlight the ponds that you'd create in the master plan, where this is in Bogura, where the road leading to the project is along mango orchard. So it's to highlight that what is important in that part of the country. Other places where he was using trees to cool down the climate. This is in Rangpur. And then there are many other places where he was trying to, this was in Sylhet, where he was trying to celebrate the idea of the water tanks. So he was making all these master plans unique to each parts of of Bangladesh, because it comes from within him to look at Bangladesh as not, or East Pakistan at that time, as just not one country, but each part of it having very unique features, and he needed to celebrate all of this and to show that the whole, I mean, palette of this of the country itself. Extremely modern building. But in the same way, this was changed from the initial plan because this was going to be more economic to build. So doesn't matter whatever he was doing, his consciousness about how to make it cheap, how to not to waste public money, all this always stayed with him in every project. From the 5 polytechnics, he went forward to another era. He brought in Luai Khan to do the parliament building and guided him, showing him what Bangladesh truly is, the greatness of Bangladesh. And from there, Luai Khan was able to develop something like this. So it needed also the, in many ways, the whispering of Muzharul Islam to develop or to transform all this into the architecture of the parliament building. Jahangirnagar University, another brilliant master plan, which were the man-made and the natural sing a duet. And the buildings being very strong in form, still, bringing in the ever familiar courtyard into the morphology of the plans. So the people who would come here to study would feel a connection this space, and yet the building would be extremely modern, almost classical in manner. Muzharul Islam always understood his country, ecology of his country, climate of his country, and then what he needed to do for the country. And it was from these things that he's able to take the understanding of climate and ecology and the beauty of rain and still transform them into very abstract ideas of architecture. I mean, it would be wonderful to be in these verandas and look out into the rain. Today's architects look at rain as only problems in terms of waterproofing and drainage and so on. The Chittagong University, again, working in a very difficult landscape, finding a way through that landscape, an extremely artistic solution, and developing buildings that were never seen before in Bangladesh, and a new way to talk to the slope. And a beautiful auditorium where the green room actually serves both the exterior stage of the amphitheater and the internal stage of the auditorium. An idea again, which he was the first to develop. This is the Shoaib Minar that he designed for Chittagong University. Jaipur Hut Housing, another wonderful master plan, a very powerful master plan. A master plan that almost looks like it's made by a master architect coming from anywhere in the world. So over here, it was On Muzharul Islam moving towards the position of a master architect. Someone who was achieving a truly international language in his architecture, where he was shedding the strains of regionalism, but he was still working with space, the materiality of the materials that he was working, the spaces that he was creating, the lives of the people that he was going to affect. All this was still very much there in his architecture, but he was moving far, far forward. Then came the war, the shooting on 25th, and the training of the freedom fighters. And these are the people who fought it, not only soldiers. And these are things that he had have seen. This is thing he has known. His own son came back to try to join into this, but he had to flee. He had to flee, otherwise he would have been another name on this chart. And then he could not stand being away from what was happening. He needed to be a part of it. He came back to a free country. And then when he came back to a free country, he knew that he needed to really be free. And it is at that time when in a free country, finally, Muzharul Islam rested. He rested because he made this building where it shows absolutely no attitude to want to, or let's say no anxiety to have to do something or make up for something, but to go forward and to do just a pure architecture. And this was the building he created, something truly of international architectural abstractness, something of mastery, beautiful proportions, beautiful scales, wonderful display of brickwork, and something that was fit to sit in Luay Khan's master plan. So Muzharul Islam, the person, completed his journey from the young person growing up through events of history, knowing that he needs to do his part, to be this politician before an architect, to go forward and then to do what he needs to do, to lead a country, to give people voices, to show that through culture and through our thoughts and through our politics, we will only be able to be united. And that is why how he was able to unite artists, thinkers, and writers around him. And it is also those people who needs to be investigated exactly in this same way, to be understood who they really are. Muzharul Islam was once asked that, why did you do politics? And he answered, probably it was the most architectural thing to do at that time. So if we look at this writing by Aristotle, he believed that abstract knowledge of ethics and politics is worthless. Practical knowledge is only useful if we act on it. We must act appropriately if we are to be moral. So today, I leave you with this thought that whatever we think in terms of politics, if it is just in an idea, it has no real presence. It is in our act that we will be able to say who we are. I leave you with this. Thank you very much.